Hey everybody, what is up? Welcome back to Final Trade. I want to go back and tell you about selling singles in the 22, 23, 24 era and how that ties in with the bulk market, what has happened since then, and what the future might hold for us. So, I started selling singles in the summer of 2022. There was a big opportunity back then on Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate was an unbelievably great set with a lot of cards that people wanted, but the sealed product was hated by everyone for a lot of reasons that were, well, they just had to do with that time period, with the way that Baldur's Gate was marketed and then what you actually got, and then comparing it with DM22, which came a couple of weeks later. So there was a really, really, really bad attitude in the market towards the sealed product for that expansion. While at the same time, everybody loved the singles. It had so many great singles that supported Commander and that people wanted to have. And so there was a very big mismatch there. The value of the single cards was much greater than the cost of the sealed product, and there was a whole lot of opportunity to buy the sealed product with any discounts you could, open it, sell them on TCG Player, and then make money off of that. And for a long time in 2022 and all of 23 and even into 24, I was doing that. I arbitraged the hell out of Baldur's Gate and I made a lot of money doing it. I opened something like 200 draft boxes of Baldur's Gate. And then eventually I started doing the collector boxes because after a while, the price discrepancy there became too great. Once WotC opened the floodgates and released all the collector boxes from their Austin warehouse and they started hitting the market, there was a time period where you could buy a Baldur's Gate collector box, open it for singles, put them on TCG Player, sell them, pay all the fees, pay any associated shipping costs you needed to, and make over $80 of profit off of a 180 card collector box. So the number of cards you actually had to handle compared to the amount of profit you made was probably the best ratio I've ever seen. Now, in that time period, there were many other opportunities and there were plenty other expansions that I opened for singles and sold profitably, but none so profitably as Baldur's Gate. Well, what happened? Where did that opportunity go? Well, in 2023, WotC really righted the ship on a lot of their print runs, a lot of the product engineering. And by the end of 2023, Black Friday was kind of the last hurrah of the bear market. It was the point at which nearly every product turned and only went upwards for the next almost 2 years now. And so we burnt through all the product. It took 2023 and the first half, maybe the first 4 months of 2024 to finish burning up all that glut of sealed product that had built up in the market since 2020. And so when that glut of sealed product was gone, there were no more cheap boxes for people to open and arbitrage against the value of the singles in them. And so the box breaking part of this business really dried up to a great degree. And there were only about three times in late 2024, say the second half of 24, where I opened sealed products and added them to my singles inventory on TCG Player. And there have been no times in 2025 where there's been a good opportunity for that. And the reason is, again, WotC slash print runs. And so the arbitrage opportunities were not there. Now, I think something else was happening at the same time. Well, first, let me talk about bulk for a minute. So, the bulk market really got hot in that time period too. And the reason was you had sellers like me who would go through and say, at one point, open 60 Jumpstart 2022 booster boxes at once. Okay. So I'd sit in my living room with a table set up. I'd open 60 boxes and I would sort them, list them up on TCG Player, and just sell through gobs of them. And my TCG Player replenishment invoices would just be thousands and thousands of cards 2 times a week. And eventually, I would sell through the best cards. Of course, the best cards, the highest price cards, sell first because they're the most in demand because they're the best. That's how they become the highest priced. And so all of that really good stuff sells through fast. Within a couple weeks, you sell through most of the mid level stuff and you start working down the inventory of the lower level stuff. And as you look down that spectrum more and more towards the bulk, the cards sell slower and slower, but they have lower values. And all of those things tie together. They sell slower, they have lower value, they're less desirable, there's less throughput of those cards through the market, the volume is low. And so that created opportunity for the folks who specialize in the bulk side of the business because people like me would say, well, gee, my inventory's swollen to 120,000 cards, but I haven't sold more than two or three cards a day out of one expansion or another in the inventory because everything that was good has been wrung out of there. I'm way in the profit on those, and all that's left is junk. And so from time to time, and I wrote a script that would do it in MATLAB. It would go through my inventory and it would pick out everything below a certain price that I had more than a certain number of copies of. It'd give me a pull list of that, and it would create a file to upload to TCG Player that would modify my inventory for all those products with zeros. And I would know which things to pull out of my inventory, pack into mid-size flat rate boxes for selling on eBay. And I would get rid of those cards. But that was good fodder for the bulk folks. And they got a lot of opportunity in that time from all of the people like me who were operating in my side of the market, which was opening sealed and selling the majority of the value out of it very quickly, letting some of the lower value stuff sit around longer, making plenty of profit, and then getting rid of all of the bulk. So for the folks who sold the bulk in that time period, they did really well too because they could add some more labor into those cards, move a lot of bulk, and operate their businesses. Now, we come into 2024 and the boxes dry up, everything gets more difficult. And I've talked to a lot of patrons over the last year and a half about this exact thing, about how the market for breaking boxes dried up in that time period, but how we expect when we go into the next bear market for Magic, it should come back. But why might it not come back? So let's talk about something else that has happened in this time period, and that is the proliferation of card sorting robots. Now, there are several Kickstarter programs going on right now for card sorting robots. There's, of course, the very, very nice Rokabot that you can buy from TCG Player. There are uh, several other bots that do various levels of sorting. Some of them are just sifting, some of them are full alphabetical sorting, and some in between. But the cost to add automation to your singles business has gone way, way down in the last 3.5 years. It has plummeted from before, it was mostly Roka and a few others. And the Roka, I think the last time I saw it was like $25,000 or something, or 23,000 for a Roka. And now there are a lot of bots on the market in the $600 to $2,000 range. Now, some of them can only do basic sifting or sifting into a couple of different outputs so that basically you're sifting and doing very simple sorts at the same time. But that still adds a lot of value. It still saves a lot of time when you're sorting. And, if you do things like when you open booster packs, you go ahead and sort by color, or at the very least, you should always be sorting by slot within the booster pack. Then you couple that with a sifting robot, you can get a lot of good sorting done pretty quickly, even with those basic cheap robots. And so, you look around at people like Mason at Cardinal Gaming, who has at least two Rokas. You look at Rob from RNG Games, who has built a very mature business on automation, having a staff that knows how to uh, do the sorting, do the picking and the packing and the shipping for that, and being able to really automate a lot of that business and make it very, very, very efficient. And so I wonder if even when we get into the next bear market for Magic, if the singles and the bulk businesses will come back because we've added so much automation. And if you have a couple of these big players, and by a couple, I mean probably 20 or 30 across the country, who have invested very heavily in automation, who have good relationships for getting discounts on sealed product, for taking anything unpopular off of the distributor's hands, and they're able to really drive the cost of operating this business down so that they can also drive the profit margins and the prices down so they can keep capturing sales. That's going to squeeze out a lot of those people like me who were before 3 years ago, even up to a year and a half ago, doing sorting by hand and making a lot of money doing it. So I suspect we will see that the business of singles and bulk changes a lot when we get into the next bear market. There's so much additional automation in the industry that was not there 3 years ago. Now, there's a second thing that's also important along the same lines, but not quite as important, and that is Mox Alpha. Mox Alpha has changed things a lot. And I used to make a lot of videos showing my mathematical models of how I was evaluating the EV of various expansions. And I got a lot of following from people who were interested in that stuff. But now Mox Alpha can make a pretty good model and you get it just for a monthly subscription fee. And it's available to everyone. And so it used to be that you either needed to know that a small niche channel like Final Trade existed, or you needed to have specific training and experience and skills like I had in math modeling and associated subjects to do that, or you needed to just have a good ability to make an educated guess. And, nowadays everybody can just pay whatever $20, $30 a month for Mox Alpha, and they get a pretty good model. Mox Alpha isn't perfect. It's almost all of it is better than the stuff I used to be able to produce. It's still not perfect, so just keep that in mind because WotC does not tell us everything about every slot in every type of booster pack. So Mox Alpha is making some assumptions, but they're making fewer assumptions than I was ever making. So that's another thing that has changed where there used to be a additional bar you had to pass of knowledge of the products and ability to calculate and or guess and or divine the EV of a product. And that's not a barrier to entry any longer. And so that's another thing where it allows a lot more competitors to come into the singles and the bulk market and be competitive. And so another reason why I would expect that the businesses that have set up with a high amount of automation, guys like Rob and Mason and anyone like them, will still do well the next time we have a Magic Bear market. They will still do really well breaking boxes and selling singles. But I don't think guys running operations like I was running from 2022 through 2024 will be very competitive next time. So I'm trying to keep my ear to the ground on that. And I have patrons about once a month. A patron will ask me about selling bulk, selling singles, things like that. They'll have questions. They'll be operating a business on it and ask me about it. I'm trying to maintain my ongoing view of that market and my ability to see what's going on in it. I think there will be a little bit of opportunity I'll be able to harness when I open the store. There may be opportunity for new releases to open some number of cases of play booster boxes, for instance, and have those cards in the store for people to buy, or really what I'd probably do is have them on my TCG player account and allow people to buy them through that and pick them up through the store. That's really the way to do it. But in that case, you can charge a premium because people are getting them next day picked up in the store instead of 5, 8, 10 days shipped from a seller on TCG player who's somewhere else in the US. So I think there may be a little bit of an ability for me to offer that as a profitable service once I'm in the store. We'll see. But I have serious doubts about the ability to run the type of singles and bulk businesses that we saw pop up and become so popular in 2022 through 2024, just due now to all the huge amount of automation that's been added to the industry. So let me know what you think, guys. I've been thinking about this for really months and months, and a couple of questions just recently from some patrons about it. Got it rolling downhill in my brain fast enough to get me to make a video. Thanks to everyone who makes this content possible, especially my very generous supporters on Patreon. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, and join me on Final Trade. By a robot.